Digimon designs. Over the years, we have had many different designs for existing Digimon, but those tend to be cemented as variants. You know, Agumon, Snow Agumon, Toy Agumon, Agumon 2006, the list goes on and on. But today I'm not talking about variants. Today I'm talking about the exact same Digimon, which, whether it's because of different artists, because Digimon has worked with so many different artists for so many different reasons over the years, or just because of how long Digimon's been running for and the kind of design and early stages of the franchise, a lot of these Digimon have had completely different designs. So in today's video, let's talk about 10 of them that stand out as being particularly different to me. What is up, digital companions? My name is Karn EX and welcome back to another video. And yes, today we are talking about how Digimon designs change over the years. We're looking at 10 Digimon who, whether it's in concept art, original art, or just for some other weird reason throughout the years, has had very big differences to their designs. But before we get into that, it's Future Karn here, because I have been given a super cool opportunity to be one of the first people to react to the trailer for today's sponsor, Rusty Rabbit. Let's go. He's so cute! Oh, he looks determined. He gets a mech suit! He's a middle-aged rabbit living in a particular world. This is peak. Oh, heck yeah. This looks incredible! Ooh, that looks so much fun. Yeah, wow! Incredible boss design, I love that. Oh yeah, you can really get yourself stuck into this.
Leave it to me!
Hey, stop that, you idiot!
Gen Urobuchi who wrote Madoka Magica? I didn't know that. Wow, this looks incredible. I'm legitimately really excited for this.
Cute little bunny, not a chance.
I legitimately, until this reaction, did not know that Gen Urobuchi was writing this game. He wrote one of my favorite TV series of all time. That is crazy. I think Rusty Rabbit will be a natural fit for you guys. You love cute creatures, and all those boss and enemy designs are right in my wheelhouse, so I imagine they will be in yours. The gameplay involves exploration, collecting resources, and customizing a mech to delve deeper into the game's dungeons, and it's set in a post-apocalyptic world where a middle-aged rabbit father is searching for his missing daughter. Rusty Rabbit is a casual and accessible game for everyone, so make sure you check my link in the description and hop into the adventure now, making sure to pre-order or wishlist on PS5, Nintendo Switch, and Steam ahead of the game's release on April 17th, 2025. And thank you to Rusty Rabbit for sponsoring this video. And my first one is Bearmon, and this is the most subtle of the list, which is why it's kind of at number 10. Bearmon has had some pretty inconsistent fare over the years for a Digimon that has had some pretty prominent outings in things like Digimon Eirias, Digimon Frontier, and Digimon Adventure Tri as a partner. Sometimes its fur is very dark, sometimes it's lighter grey, and sometimes it's objectively brown. Now this could absolutely just be lighting, but if we look at official art and some game renders, it also has this discrepancy. In fact, I forgot to mention it, but when we made the custom evolution for Grismon leading into Callismon in December, Dry gave it brown fur as kind of a callback to that idea of the brown furred Bearmon to finally make it feel a little bit less out of step with all its evolutions. But looking at these different coloured Bearmon, it's almost like they are variants. Like we've got a black Bearmon and a brown Bearmon. Now all we need is a polar Bearmon. Hey, wait! I also talked about these recently, but I think it's worth going over in a little bit more detail, and that is the Digital Monster version 5 Digimon. Now all the original dot matrix sprites for V-Pets, by nature of just being tiny black and white sprites, or I guess just black sprites, are not going to have the detail of a full lined piece of art. However, I do think these designs, specifically on the Digital Monster version 5, were kind of a little bit of a, we're gonna make these look like the Godzilla monsters, because if you didn't know, the Digital Monster version 5 has a bunch of callouts to Godzilla. Go watch my video wrapping up the Digimon introduced in 2024 for more information on that. And yeah, of course I can see how this sprite of Ramon, for example, could be the art of Ramon that we have now, but the shape is very clearly much more similar to Hedora. Like Hedora and Ramon look similar, but this sprite specifically looks like Hedora. Dark Tyrannomon, Metal Tyrannomon, sure they match up. Cyclomon looks pretty similar. Tuskmon I think is is far and away different to its official art, obviously resembling Space Godzilla. Like these back horns of Tuskmon, while yes, they do line up to that official VPET sprite, it's clearly very different. Even Deltamon, I think, is a big cop-out. We end up with this lizard with these two kind of chimeric arms, but you can tell that's King Ghidorah, bro. Those heads look nothing like the Deltamon we got. Honestly, if anything, it looks more like a Chocobo than Deltamon. But I think the biggest offender of all of them is Flymon, because that's not a wasp. I'm sorry, but no matter how you slice that, that does not look the same as the official art of Flymon. For starters, Flymon sort of doesn't have eyes. It has these lightning bolt strikes, but the Flymon in the VPET has an eye. It also has this kind of like button nose, which Flymon doesn't have. But you know what it does resemble near identically? Yeah, Mothra. If anything, this should be the VPET sprite for Mothmon, not Flymon. There's just no world where that is a wasp or bee of any variety. That is Mothra. Okay, so we're out of the realm. We're leaving VPET sprites. We're going back to actual art, and I want to talk about my goat, Tenya Yabano. If you're not familiar, Tenya Yabano is a historic Digimon artist. He did work on the original Digimon V-Tamer manga. He also stepped in to do character design for Digimon Ghost Game. He did Digimon Dreamer, the manga recently, and a bunch more. But back in the day, he was one of the artists beside Kenji Watanabe that would do Digimon art for various media. And at the time, we had VPET art and some early Kenji Watanabe art, but it seems like Tenya Yabano just kind of did his own thing for a little while there. So for example, thanks to JP Excelsior for rounding this up in a tweet, we have the original design Kenji Watanabe made for the Digital Monster proposal. A little while later, we would have the original Metal Greymon virus design from the Digital Monster version S, but between those two, this version of Metal Greymon, and I mean, it sort of resembles Metal Greymon. I feel like it could also be a Metal Greymon 2006 or something, you know? It honestly feels pretty similar to Veedramon and Era Veedramon, which makes sense given the fact that Tenya Yabano did do the art for Digimon V-Tamer, and that is the prominent part in Digimon in that manga. But it really doesn't end there. In the Digimon King original manual, which was kind of a manga and guide to the original Digital Monster VPETs in Japan, Seadramon looks basically like Seadramon. Tyrannomon, give or take, is basically Tyrannomon, but then we have a really cool looking Meramon, which is in line with the Death Meramon design he would create for Come On Digimon later, not to be confused with Death or Skull Meramon that would release many years later. We have this take on Airdramon, which is blue. I think that's very interesting. While Airdramon's body has remained blue, it has got these orange wings now and a kind of skull face, which we don't see in this design. It's basically entirely blue, almost feeling like a kind of like winged Gyarados. And speaking of blue, we also have this design for, I assume, Greymon, which is fundamentally different. Well, it does have that same kind of headpiece. It extends all the way down the body and onto the tail, and he has a blue underbody, kind of like the Virus Metal Greymon, and indeed some other Greymon variants we would see over the years. Also, we have this Devimon who is flipping the bird. I see that joke edit of Vmon flipping the bird everywhere on the internet, but we literally have official art of Devimon flipping the bird. I love you, Tenya Yabano. Speaking of Tenya Yabano, I also think his design for Veedramon and Aero Veedramon has been somewhat lost over the years in favor of the designs we have now. When we look at things like the Digimon card game, it's almost like the Digimon V-Tamer version of Veedramon and Aero Veedramon are considered their own variants somewhat, being called Veedramon Zero and Aero Veedramon Zero because the Digimon partner was Zero or Zero Maru. However, officially, they've never been given their own Digimon reference book listings, and so ostensibly are considered the same creature. But when you compare the Zero Veedramon to the regular Veedramon we have now, they're very different. While they are bulky, I think this version of Veedramon is a lot more scrappy, like it's been in a lot more fights. Whereas Yabano's version is much cuter, and I would say a little bit bulky overall, and less battle damaged. This becomes very obvious though when we jump to Tenya Yabano's Aero Veedramon, as his version feels like a heroic upgrade to the base Veedramon. A much more grandiose feeling step between Veedramon Zero and Ulforce Veedramon. Whereas the official art of Aero Veedramon we have now, and other depictions we have of it outside of V-Tamer, continues that scrappy feel, and almost makes Aero Veedramon feel like a skull evolution with the claws. It looks much more kind of diminished and withered, and yeah, like it's been through some really hard battles, which is true of the Aero Veedramon of V-Tamer, but I always just felt that the Aero Veedramon of V-Tamer felt much more heroic and together, whereas this official art makes it look much more creepy, I think. And while it's not maybe intended to be bone, as we see in other art, it more just looks kind of like a flesh color, that official render really gives off counterpart to Skull Greymon to me. I don't know, I think I prefer the non-tattered versions of Veedramon and Aero Veedramon, and would like to see them get more outings in future media. Then there's some Digimon that weren't originally Digimon, but basically their entire design is exactly the same, and that is Chaos Lord becoming Chaosdramon and Mecha Rogue X becoming Craniumon. So this is a bit of a difficult one for me, whether I want to call these variants or not. Personally, I side that they're not variants, they just originally were created as non-Digimon creatures or Digimon adjacent creatures and eventually retconned to be Digimon. Chaos Lord is straight up a first-time take on Chaosdramon. It's a red Machinedramon with extra parts, which is literally what Chaosdramon is. In fact, it seems to be that Chaos Lord is like the name of a Chaosdramon in Digimon World 2, and while the design has changed, it's still ostensibly the same Digimon, just with a little tweaking to proportions, posing, and adding some extra details and official art. But as I said, we also have Mecha Rogue X from Digimon World X, debuting in 2005, and the same year, 2005, we also saw the debut of the Royal Knight Craniumon. That's the same guy, and it's very clear that, yeah, Mecha Rogue X or Craniumon, whichever came first in the design process, was supposed to resemble each other. Personally, I believe that Mecha Rogue X eventually was transmuted into the design of Craniumon, but if you have a source that you can tell me that confirms that it was the other way around, that Craniumon existed and then they made this digital life form based on it for Digimon World X or Digimon World 4, let me know. Either way, it's fascinating to see this kind of like almost beta Craniumon design. And it is funny that we would eventually get a Craniumon X that looks even less like Mecha Rogue X than Craniumon does. There are some notable differences like the weapons, however, undisputably the design is so easily seen to transmute to Craniumon, it's kinda crazy. Moving along is something that's fun to observe, and this is more of a beta or planning stages type of list for this video, but that is how contest Digimon looked before they were officially drawn by Digimon artists, because yeah, a lot of Digimon were actually competition winners designed by fans back in the day. I wish they would bring this back. For example, we have this original Dobemon art that looks even more evil and demonic than the Dobemon we got. It's the reason why Dobemon shows up in Digimon Tamers. We have the Devi Tamamon fan submission, which is pretty different to the Devi Tamamon we got. Well, it does have this sort of draconic mouth peeping out. It doesn't have the multiple eyes of the eventual real Devi Tamamon, and also it has this crown on top, which I think is very cool. It honestly, proportion-wise, feels very different to Devi Tamamon, but I'd really like to see it as either a champion or mega form for Devi Tamamon in future. It's a little bit less evil looking than Devi Tamamon would end up looking, but it's such a cool design. It also reminds me of something, but I can't think of what it is. Let me know in the comments down below. Quick ones, we have Yo-Yo-Mon, which is a different coloration to the eventual Yo-Yo-Mon. What was known as UFO Mamemon when the competition was entered, but now is Catch Mamemon. Pretty similar, but some differences. Footmon, which honestly, I think the original art might be a cooler depiction of Footmon than what we got. Much more spiky and kind of cool looking than Footmon, which is still cool. And then we've got the fan submitted art for Ikakimon, Jokermon, Ganemon, and Surfymon, and these are just adorable. It's insane that the Digimon team managed to take this very childish art and turn them into proper Digimon designs, but they absolutely nailed it. This is one of my favorite parts of the franchise. Alright, so some of you may have seen that I actually put a call out on Twitter when I was in the middle of writing this video to see if any of you had some Digimon designs that changed over the years. And one that I'd never seen before is that Systemon CL Awakened looks pretty significantly different in her Hacker's Memory model to how it looks in official art. Actually similar to that era of Vidramon situation, the model in Hacker's Memory is lacking the ripped clothing and eye scar, but instead has a boob window for lack of a better word. It's really interesting how different these designs are, considering CL is so talked about in the fandom as a replacement in the US versions of Cyber Sleuth for Noir, but I never really see people bring up how different this model and the official art are. It almost feels like a step in between Systemon CL and its awakened form. Just really cool, never seen that one. Then we got a bunch of them. Some of these I already had on the list, but I do want to give a shout out to Mugen Airfryer or at Infinity Cannon for pointing out in the original Digimon world that Machinedramon looked very different, and I never really thought about this, but yeah, it's almost like a perfected Machinedramon. Machinedramon Silver, it's like if Machinedramon was less corrupted or something, even though that's not the plot of Digimon World. It looks more like it got all the bits it needed rather than harvesting them from other Digimon. And this actually is a recurring theme with Digimon World and Digimon Digital Card Battle, is that even though those games had variants of existing Digimon, like Penguinmon and Muchomon for example, they also just decided randomly to do slightly different designs for Digimon that they didn't give variants to. The notable one for me is this Gardramon, which feels like it could be a Gardramon variant. It's almost similar to Gardramon Gold with these gold elements. One that I hadn't noticed before is Brachiomon, which also is very different in coloration in Digimon World 1 and indeed in Digimon Adventure 02 D1 Tamers, which is a weird exception. That feels more consistent that this is supposed to be what originally Brachiomon looked like before it was kind of changed to be more similar to the Greymon family in coloration. But the most standout for me is of course the one that is likely the thumbnail of this video, Cherrymon, who in the original Digimon World 1 was, well, there was a lot of fog around Cherrymon, wasn't there? Maybe he was the culprit after all. Our penultimate pick is some original designs for what we think ended up being current Digimon, and that is, and I've talked about this in a video before, didn't do super well, but if you want to go check it out, I think it's actually really fascinating. The original pitch for Digimon was something something called Capsule Zorus, which, yes, was a lot more similar to Pokemon than the Digimon we got, making it an even more bitter irony that they pivoted away from something like Pokemon, only to be called a Pokemon copy for 25 years. But in these Capsule Zorus design notes, we do have a much more simplistic set of creatures, and two of those to me definitely look like beta designs for Meramon and Birdramon, with the kind of beta Meramon being more like a floating Final Fantasy bomb with arms, but what looks like the original design for Birdramon is honestly pretty close to what we got. It's a kind of bird dragon monster that's on fire. And we even have stuff that translates even closer. This T-Rex and Triceratops looking monster easily could have ended up being Tyrannomon and Triceramon, something that looks like a beta Airdramon or Seadramon, a Koromon-like monster, and something that is just straight up Numemon but with eyelashes. So many of these Digimon were there at the start. You could even argue that this is Otamamon and Gekomon. And then we have this, well, I guess Digimon's always been into the strange humanoid creatures from day one. And that brings me to my final pick. And just like Bandai, it all comes back to Omnimon. But listen, I have a couple of interesting things to say about Omnimon. And that's before we even talk about concept art, because Omnimon, as one of the most popular Digimon of all time, also has some of the most inconsistent designs in Digimon. Now, of course, we could nitpick little things like helmet size, cape length, specifics of the Grey Sword and the Garuru Cannon, but the one that always gets to me is that across various media, the symbol on Omnimon's chest is incredibly inconsistent. Here's Digimon Adventure Last Evolution Kizuna. He has this sort of protruding symbol, almost like jewelry, which kind of looks like it's made up of half of the Crest of Courage and half of the Crest of Friendship, kinda. Digimon New Century has basically the same symbol, getting us a better look at it, as does Digimon Survive, which doesn't even have crest. I mean, I don't think New Century does either, but the point stands. But then we look at the official art of Omnimon, and while it does have a very much more clear half Crest of Courage, half Crest of Friendship, it's no longer a piece of jewelry, but more like a tattoo or a stencil on its chest. Then we look at the official art for the Omnimon reboot toy that was going to be a thing, and it just has a little sort of blue circle in its chest, but fair, that's a sort of half redesign, that's okay. Let's go to the Omnimon in Digimon World Redigitize. Yep, the Omnimon made up of Wargreymon, you can clearly see the Crest of Courage here on its shoulder, and Metal Garurumon, which presumably has the Crest of Friendship on the other shoulder, just has a Crest of Courage on its chest. Okay, what about this Omnimon Toei acrylic art? Oh, we're back to the weird circle with the blue, which means that the reboot design was not a one-off, this is some other thing they do for Omnimon sometimes. Then we have this weird card where he's, I don't know, dressed up in celebration, he's got some kind of different okay, this is clearly not a intentionally similar Omnimon. So you might be thinking, okay, so sometimes he has the Crest of Courage and Crest of Friendship half, sometimes he doesn't. Perhaps this is just depictions of Omnimon, depending on whether he's fueled by the Crest of Courage and Crest of Friendship. I mean, ignore that you can very clearly see the Crest of Courage on almost all of their shoulder blades in these arts, but maybe it just means that when it's the Adventure Omnimon and it's using the crests, that's why it has the crest symbol on its chest. Yeah, about that. In our war game, he just has the yellow and blue circle, but in Digimon Adventure PSP, when they recreate the exact same scene, he has, I think, just the Crest of Courage tattoo, and like I say in Try and Kizuna, he gets that weird piece of jewelry again. Bandai, I'm so confused. What does this mean? Why does the symbol keep changing? Is there no design document that says it looks like this? Draw it like this. If someone can track me down a reason from an interview why this thing changes depending on the piece of media, even in the same continuity, I would love to hear it, but I suspect it doesn't exist. Oh, and yeah, Omnimon almost looked completely different 3 times. The original concept art of Omnimon was crazy. We had this called Garuru Greymon, a much more literal centaur-like fusing of Wargreymon and Metal Garurumon. We had Master Dramon, which, good Master Tyrannomon evolution, and yeah, it has the Crest of Courage and Friendship on its chest, but maybe would have been a little bit underwhelming for the movie. And this, which looks straight up like if Agumon Bond of Courage and Gabumon Bond of Friendship merged, which is interesting, isn't it? We've got a form that resembles the Bonds 20 years before the Bonds existed. Wild. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I got a little bit ranty at the end. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about my boy Omnimon. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. It really does help the channel immensely in the algorithm, so it'd really be appreciated if you would do that. And thank you to my sovereigns over on patreon.com/Karn EX, ZDK14, and Ram McGrayfire, as well as everyone else over there, and everyone here on YouTube channel memberships. I appreciate you all very much. I'll see you next time when we go digital. Bye-bye.